Our next speaker is Jacob Groundwater. And I'm not going to say what he's talking about because he's got it on the screen already. So everybody come down, crowd around, and I'm going to let him get going.
There we go. Hey, thank you for having me here, everyone. So usually this is not the normal type of talk that I give, and it's probably going to be like all over the place and weird, and I might go into a story, and I'm really trying to get to the heart of it, which is why it's much more of a feels talk. I framed it as promises, and those promises in Node, and they're contentious, and it relates to that story, but it's kind of like a bit of a journey that I went on and other people have gone on, and something that I think is kind of a problem happening right now, not just in Node and a lot of open source. So just quickly, my name's Jacob Groundwater. I work in San Francisco, Twitter handle there. And I want to talk about a real problem, and that's that I think people are burning out. This is happening to many of the people I know in the Node community and other communities, JavaScript communities. I've gone through it a little bit. I was coming up here and I was thinking, I want to talk about burnout, but I haven't really burned out. And I realized I have imposter syndrome about burning out. Like I felt like I didn't burn out enough to come up and do a talk about it. But I'm going to talk about it. I'm just at the right spot. I'm kind of aware of it. I have people who I really care about in the community, and they're burning out all the time. And this is bad. So before we get into this, I really want to talk about how I've both experienced it, but also really contributed to it. And I think that maybe this will be a big journey about a lot of the mistakes I have made. And if I frame it about myself, it's like, hey, maybe we can all laugh about it and then learn something. So I'm going to kind of reveal a bunch of the dumb things that I've done, and you're welcome to laugh about it because I feel like I've grown out of the sensitive phase. But a little story. So go back 4 or 5 years. I was actually in Vancouver, Canada. I was working as a sysadmin, doing some kind of development on the side. I really wanted to do like startup-y stuff. And I think you're all going to laugh at me when I say this, but like I didn't really realize the level and craziness of like tech stuff that was going on in the Bay Area or even Portland. Like I would be like, if it's not Google or Apple, like where would you work? Like I didn't know. Like I didn't actually know until I came down. And the reason I came down is my girlfriend lived there and we met like overseas on a trip. And we were talking about like, hey, we should live in the same city. And I was like, well, can I find work down there? I do software. Do they have that kind of thing? And like, lucky for me, I moved down at the right time in the right place. I didn't say, this is my mistake. So I came to SF 3 years ago, and it was like I was really into all the tech things, and I didn't yet kind of see the dark side of it all. And I was like, it was like Disneyland. I loved it. I was going to meetups all the time. I was going to like hackathons, and I'd read about a technology, and I'd go to the event where the person who made that technology was speaking that night. Like I ate it all up. Like it was new and sparkly and shiny, and I loved it. And like I still vividly remember the first Node meetup I went to in the Bay Area. It was a Joyent. Isaac was speaking. I met Forrest there in person for the first time. Forrest and I later worked together. He now works on the NPM command line. D. Shaw, if you know him. That was actually the first time I met D. Shaw as well. Like it was. I have a lot of good memories about it, but I didn't realize that I was kind of on a journey towards doing a lot of really dumb things. And one of the problems was I started to meet like the local JS and Node heroes. Like I was like, I know that module. There's Max. Like he made that thing that we use. That's amazing. Or Isaac did that. Like I was meeting these people, and like when you're just getting into that world for the first time, what do you want to do? You want to be like them, and I'm hoping everyone can read this. I wanted that, and I didn't like, it was like more selfish and vain than anything, but I was like, yeah, I want like 20,000 Twitter followers and all the GitHub stars, and I want someone talking on Reddit about how I used the coolest math to do, like, I was in on the deep end, and it was not good, I think. And the problem with that is, what do you do when you see someone who you kind of like want to aspire to be like? You copy their behaviors, but you only copy the behaviors you perceive. And one of the biggest behaviors that you see people doing is Twitter. Like, they're on Twitter and they're opinionated and they're chiming into stuff, but like a lot of times, these people already maybe know each other, they have a rapport. I was like the rando person running in and like, I have opinions, let me share them with everyone. And the problem with the I have opinions method is Twitter is kind of like a loaded gun. It's very easy to pull that trigger and just kind of assault the other person on the other side. This is something that Twitter is still working on and not that great at addressing, but like, I was like, no, I will see your technical argument and raise you another technical argument. I was just in. And these people, like, I don't even know if I knew them really. Maybe I knew them, they might not know me, but it was dumb. So a lot of times, it's a tough line between Twitter and Twitter fight. Like, there's so many in Node that I can think of. There's like promises, callbacks, and there's Node modules, everything about ES6 and tooling and express versus restify, and you can just get in these Twitter wars. And the problem is that, Twitter has very legitimate uses, I think. It's one of the ways that I find out about kind of what is happening in like the latest development of certain modules and the directions people are going. And there's really good discussions on there, but it's just way too easy to derail those those discussions. And the problem was I was contributing to these people's burnout by just lobbing things in. So my bad. I apologize for doing that. And there's a story in here where I did it like 3 months ago, so like I'm still getting better. But really, like, my girlfriend was really helpful, and she was like, are you arguing on the internet again? Because I see a lot of Twitter notifications. She's like, she has my Twitter on notifications. So if I tweet, like, it comes up on her phone, which is sweet. I like that. But every now and then she's just like walk in the room like, give me the look, because there's like 40 replies in a row. And she does software too, but that's a world she doesn't want to touch. So now the embarrassing story. And okay, so I'm trying actually really to only name myself in this talk, but someone who I really respect and have worked with and would consider a friend, I'm going to bring him up just because that's kind of how this talk came about. But like Chris Dickinson works for NPM, awesome guy, really respect him. And he put forward, he did what a responsible like Node core contributor would do, and that's. Oh, by the way, I also have like a random cough that comes up, and I'll try to shield the mic if that happens, but forgive me. So he said, we're going to put promises in Node. And the reason he did this was not, he was like, promises are the one true way, your religion is wrong, we're going to, like, it was like, hey, listen, a lot of people are using promises. Promises have gotten into V8. There's native implementations of promises now. And the Node API doesn't expose any of these. So what happens is people come along and they have kind of stubbing libraries that go around this stuff. And your lib might use one like Node API. So the FS module, instead of using callbacks, it'll give you a promise now. But this was like a third-party lib. And there's a couple of these. So what would happen is people were kind of mix and matching, and then you had all these different libs. Very, very reasonable thing to do was we should just provide a native implementation. Callbacks are still there. You can totally use them. There's also this one, fair, level playing field. Now, in my perfect storm situation that's developing here, I've been talking with some colleagues that I'd met who, one of them worked at Netflix, and one of the problems that they had was Node was new to their stack, and there were a lot of people there who were having trouble kind of just learning the basics. So what they wanted to do was put a document together around how to not tie your shoelaces together and trip up on Node. And the biggest thing a lot of people seem to trip up on was error handling. So I was like, awesome, we'll get together, naivety, we'll put a bunch of smart people in a room with a whiteboard and good things will happen. And we came together, we did a document and, mixed results. I would say it was kind of good, kind of bad. But one of them that came out of it, and this is really the only technical thing, and it's like a small thing. And this was the ammunition for the gun I was about to fire in Chris's direction. What we discovered is there was a big problem about not just error handling, but error handling, and this tripped up a lot of new people, was error handling when you didn't think you were going to handle that error. So for example, let's pretend you have this collect. This is the only code in the talk. Say you have this get user function there, and that returns a promise, and you're getting the user Kim. That's their ID for whatever. And this is a promise, so it has a then if it succeeds and a catch on rejection. And if we say, oh, on the then, the user exists, and I'll do something with that user. And on the catch, the user didn't exist. It was like an error. Now, good API design or not, things that are roughly equivalent to this is kind of how a lot of folks will use promises. And we were like, oh, well, you know what? There's other problems that could come up. So say that the person who implemented get user relied on some module. That module had a semver bump, so it got upgraded. But there was a bug in it, someone mistyped and a syntax error gets thrown. Under the callback method, your application would crash. Some people like that, some people don't. I'm not going to get into that part. Under the promise one, that catch method actually invokes, and you proceed under the assumption the user doesn't exist. And we're like, that's kind of a situation we wanted to avoid. I did not phrase it that well when I tried to bring this up with Node and promises in Node. I did a terrible job. So yeah, what did I do? Okay, so Chris puts forward the proposal. Oh, I have a double slide. Hold up. So I jump into this promises fray. Chris is talking about on GitHub and Twitter, and I was like, I have a technical piece of evidence that has no emotion attached. You should just appreciate it for what it's worth. And I literally was on a flight from SFO to New York for 6 hours. I was literally tweeting, nonstop tweeting about this, and every reply that came in, I threw a reply back. And I think Chris would credit me with being better about this situation, but looking back at it, I'm I was a total dick. Even if whatever I said was correct, it's just so derailing to do that to somebody that I apologize. But I was worked up. It just I had seen these habits that other people do, and I'm I'm gonna copy them, and I just had the wrong behavior reinforced. And one of the results of this is I got into it too far, and I burnt out on this thing, and I just walked away. Some other people walked away, and we're we can't deal with this anymore. So not only did I burn other people out, I burned out, and it just keeps happening, and this kind of sucks. So that's the Twitter story, and I'm trying to be better. The other thing, and I'm even less good at this one than I am at the Twitter one, is GitHub. So I think GitHub has I did not really touch open source before GitHub, so to me it was that technology that made it accessible. But at the same time, there are problems with it. And one of them is it's kind of this temple of open source. And if I'm pursuing those people who I viewed as the node heroes and the programming heroes, it kind of reinforces that idea, especially when I see them with all their green squares. I'm I need all those green squares too. It's kind of your identity, your resume. And in following people who I saw working on GitHub, I was just publishing open source stuff. And I was I neglected other important things while I was doing this, and I'll get back to that, but I was I want to build the next big thing. Okay, so I see that you're doing this framework here, I'm going to do a better one. And I was worse at contributing to other projects, and I can talk about that again. but I was really trying to like build and publish stuff. So I used some of it, other stuff I was just a guest, and I was like, maybe this will like be a thing, and then people will reference it, and everyone will know me. And going back, one of the problems was, to get personal, my girlfriend had done a study abroad, and she was away studying, and we were videoing and stuff. And like, there were times again when she's like, you're not paying attention anymore. We're like videoing, and she could tell I just zoned out because I was back coding on something. And it was super unhealthy. Like, we're still together, thank you. Like, she put up with a lot because I was like not a good person around then. But it was like, I was like fixated on this idea that I was gonna like copy all those behaviors that I'd seen. So I'm much better about that now. Yeah, I think I'm much better about that. I don't know, I still kind of want to do that, but like maybe this is a safe way to do that. But yeah, I've a bunch of random projects on GitHub. There's like, I was just panning for gold. Like I was literally like, no oil, nope, oil, nope. And like, you couldn't reason with me. It was bad. Yeah, you go on my GitHub and you'll see like CoffeeScript MVC frameworks and message queue libraries and job runners and all sorts of stuff. And then I got a taste of, I don't know if it's fame as much as it is infamy. So I did this project on the side one weekend, and I was like, hey, you know what? I'm learning the low levels of Linux right now, and there are things that drive me nuts, like the package managers always have these like, version A, libssl needs this, but this other thing over here needs another version of libssl. You just kind of pull your hair out, and I was like, Node already solves this. What if I could just make Node the whole operating system? Like every piece of the system, could I stub it out with a Node module? It's not that crazy, but a little crazy. So I just published Node OS as like a website, and in a weekend I put a thing up, and it was like, yeah, that's a thing. And I put my like first like hack together version of it up, and holy crap, like it was like an experiment, to see if you could do it, and you totally can. I wanted people to be able to play around, like, oh, I want to try a different way to init the system, or DHCP is weird, I'm going to do my own thing that uses something else. You could pull that one module in. I thought it was a good idea, and I published it one weekend, and one weekend it got tons of attention. And you know what? Like, people suck. Like, oh man, they're so mean. Like, I thought I had made a good technical argument and carved out the domain that I was in. Didn't matter. Like, anyone with an opinion was like cruising by and like, no, you suck, and then just like lobbing it over. And I'm like, I can only imagine like this is exactly how it feels on the even bigger projects. Like, it doesn't matter if it's less crazy than booting in a whole OS and Node. Someone still has an opinion that your way is utterly crap. Like, I believe that everything should be streams. No, I believe everything should be green threads or something. Like, no matter where you are, there's just a whole camp that's lobbing arrows into you. And having gotten a bunch of arrows in my face, I was like, I didn't learn the lesson yet, but I was more like riled up, like, you people, I'll show you. But I did get the fact that few people knew who I was. I don't know if that was a big thing. I had another taste of both getting into Node more and people knowing me. I worked on the async listener project for a bit. I don't want to get into that one too much, but what it did, it's kind of like a optimized interface for tracing APIs in Node. So if you're writing something like I work at New Relic, and we have a thing that kind of instruments your Node app, this is a great thing that we can tap into, and other people tap into it too. But what that did do is, there was just a few of us who understood it, so there wasn't as much drive-by arrow shooting. But what that did do is got me a little closer to the Node core people, and they're like, hey, you want to help contribute to Node.js? Remember back to the beginning when I was like, open source heroes? Yes, I do. And so they're like, oh, help with the issue tracker. I was like, what could I do? And they're like, help with the issue tracker. I think I hate the issue tracker. Like, it's like, I want to frame this the right way. GitHub took us from kind of something very inaccessible to a lot of us to something accessible. We kind of stopped here. I want to keep going because I hate it. The support load is crazy. Like you just can't keep up with it. It's like it's like the worst or product manager you've ever had. It's just like endless stuff. And it doesn't matter what documents you set up. People will just keep throwing it in. This was the Node one. Like I was overwhelmed. I backed out. I was like, I can't do this. But from other people who could manage it, they're having to say no to all these features and having people not be nice about it when you say no. Handling like true support. Like I just don't know how to use your product or your project. This is all contributing to that burnout thing I'm talking about. And this, I think I was actually maybe better in this one. Like I tended to just post bug fixes to things, but there's another one where I wasn't as good. You got to handle the many opinions of the internet. Like you have styling, promises versus callbacks, error handling. This next one is really the one that is the kick in the pants for a lot of people, and that's the long argument threads on GitHub. It's like Twitter, but now you have a fully open forum for going crazy, and everyone has to read it in series, and it's just like, I emulated this behavior. I saw people jumping into the promises discussion, the modules discussion, ES6 discussions. I was like, oh, they're getting results. I'm going to do that. And I just dropped in, threw my opinion wherever it would explode. I got better at some of them, but I'm sure I made lots of problems with that. And these long argument threads can reach hundreds of replies. And that's now including the fact that GitHub lets you do the plus, thumbs up, thumbs down. So taking out all those, what former used to be the +1, minus one, it's just crazy. And there's people who won't let up. Maybe I was that person, maybe not, but it's exhausting. You want to have a conversation with someone, and people can just come in. Like I said, it's the loaded gun. If you have, 1 more hour a day than the core contributor, you can derail them because you can just keep replying and replying and replying. And they close the thread and you can open a new one. And then when they close that, you take it to Twitter and you invite the army of other people to come in and war on that thread. And it's just it is that this stuff burns people out. So some examples that have happened in Node are promises versus callbacks. And the promises discussion, which is promises and callbacks, do whatever you want, always lands into this promises versus callbacks territory. And it's incredibly hard to have productive discussions in this area. And I'm going to talk about a few wins I've had on actually having good technical discussions, but I'm far from having a general solution. ES6 modules is another one going on right now. And I mean, I get there's frustration, but tweeting strong statements and alienating people in different camps, it just doesn't help. Tail call optimization is a smaller one, but equally ferocious. So take this for kind of the context I mean it in, but things are broken. And I say it's broken because I mean we should just fix it. Let's fix this. I don't want all the great people who, maybe could have talked instead of me, but are burned out, so they didn't come to the conference. They could come here and they could talk about, whatever, something really cool. But I just want to address this. So we should fix it. I want to come back to this thing. This is the thing that I think is the root of a lot of this problem, which is the hero culture. It totally sent me on the wrong path. And there are things that are kind of not us individuals doing that are contributing to that. One is just seeing Twitter fame, but this one kind of bugs me, and it's kind of justified, but I don't know, it's when you see someone does a big project and then Google hires them or Facebook hires them or Apple hires them. It's really tough to not reinforce that idea. And the totally effed up thing about that is if you think about all these companies saying they're promoting inclusiveness and diversity, that cycle is the least diverse world. So what are you reinforcing when you do that? And I think it's just kind of messed up. And I'm not saying that someone's hard work shouldn't be rewarded, but there's implications to doing this. Other people leverage their fame into starting their own company and like, oh man, I totally want to do that. Don't tell my work. And other people, like, it's like a digital legacy, right? So you can get something into the browser API. You can point your grandchildren to that because JavaScript never dies. And you'll be like, oh, I made that here. The way we phrased that there was something I did. And here's the messed up part about the hero culture, I think, is it's kind of this free labor. And it's free labor because we're all playing the lottery of being, well, maybe not. There's probably enlightened people in here who've not fallen into that trap. I'll just put the spotlight on myself and say they got a lot of free labor out of me. And it's about as fair as meritocracy, which is bullshit. So it's not fair at all. Like you're just kind of like reinforcing the system, which is already heavily discriminating against people. And it's, going back. I'm not very good at doing this slide thing here. Whoops. Bear with me. Okay, this is the one I want. Making it big is like our sports hero or our movie star fallacy. Like, it's a 1 in whatever million shot or something, but we still go for it. We still dump. But if you saw someone like burning all their money on lottery tickets, or you watch American Idol and you're like, that person won't be famous, but they think they will, as we're like busy coding our latest ES6 module loader or something in the corner. Like, it's the same world, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay, so some things that might help push your companies to open source stuff. Like, then it's open source, you're getting paid, and don't go for as big a wins there. And this, when companies inevitably push back, usually what I say, and they don't all listen, but maybe you can start small, is like, if you aren't selling it, it's probably a liability and not an asset. So why not share the support load and open source it? That, mileage may vary with that statement. And, really, if one person reuses your code, I think it's a win. So things I've learned, I definitely think in person is different than online, and I call this the car effect. You're driving in a car and someone cuts you off and you're like, swear, whatever, like, you don't care. Like, you're a terrible person, but you wouldn't do that in person when you've kind of humanized the person in front of you. It's hard to infer tone via text, and, too easy to not humanize people. And you need to learn people's personalities so that you can read their words correctly. So I'm not saying all communication has to be done in person. What I'm saying is you need steps to humanize the people you're dealing with online. I have a story for this that's related to work. We don't have time because I want to get to this other thing. And I've had mixed results with this next thing, and this is definitely an in-person thing. But I think it's helped widen the perspective when we're talking about issues. And that's been like group facilitation. So in person, let me go back. In person, let's gather together and have someone kind of facilitating the group, rather than just letting it being an open forum on whoever the loudest voice is and whatever personality dominates and all the kind of cognitive biases that play in with who's right and who's wrong. Some of the nice things I've seen about this are giving spaces to quiet voices. And I very vividly remember one Node Summit where we did this, and we were asking one of the international contributors what their pain points were. And I think I or someone was facilitating, and we kind of pointed at them, asked them, and I swear it was 15 to 30 seconds of silence. And what you have to do is just stand there and kind of give them the space to think. And then they admitted, the time zone issue, because everything's centered around this time zone, is actually really jarring and difficult because they kind of have to move their life to a different time zone. And that just came out. It took 30 seconds, though. And that wouldn't have come out in a normal discussion. And that's something that was probably burning that person out. But now they said it. And once they said it, every other person who was in another time zone was like, yes, that's a huge issue for us. And it was like, you had to give space for someone to be comfortable to say that, because if you don't, it's just like, I could probably talk for another 30 minutes about, the difficulties of that. So Another one is you want to share the risk of new ideas, and this is the group facilitation thing. And what the facilitator's job is to absorb the risk of being wrong about a new idea. And what you want to do is, a lot of people, what they do is they kind of anchor into their idea and come up with a lot of strong technical arguments. And then you're kind of playing this like bat the other person off balance with like rando technical arguments. And then whoever falls down, we don't do your thing, we do my thing. And a lot of stuff devolves into this. So if you have the group and the facilitator take that risk on, what you can do is everyone can actually examine the pros and cons of an approach. And sometimes when the group works really well, you can get into like actually addressing everyone's needs instead of just the solutions they articulated. I'm running out of time. I thought I would be way under, but I got really into it and went way over. I have a lot to talk about on this. The last thing I'll say here is this is the other benefit of group facilitation is if you hear everyone, then they can listen. And what I mean by this is if I say something like, oh, I don't like the new API for Streams 3 or whatever, and someone over there has, like, they want to interject. Until they interject, they won't listen to anything else that happens. They can't. They're listening for the time to put their hand up and jump in before the conversation moves on. So what the facilitator can do is recognize that they want to talk and kind of cue that up. And if they trust that person, they will give them space to talk. So, that person will continue to listen, and then they know that they'll come back to them. Let's see. I'm going to skip through these. And this one's kind of important, and I've had some people disagree with me on this, so I'm just going to say my opinion. But when you're working together, different words have different understandings, and you've got to take time to. Here's what I really wanted to show you, is I might say something like, "Oh, promises are broken" in a long thread, and what I mean is actually on the bottom. The catch clause in my promise, my one promise, caught the wrong error. But like, I can't say that every time, so I wrap it up into some flashy sentence and say promises are broken. What the other people hear, because we haven't explored this territory together, is that you are a bad person for using promises. And there's really nowhere to go from that. Like, once you characterize that person that way, it's kind of game over. So defining your words, one technique is like if someone tells you something, try and echo back just what you heard. If you're in a group, ask another person to echo back what they heard. And a lot of times you'll discover that you're more in agreement than disagreement. And you can get to the needs, because people often articulate solutions and then skip on telling you the needs. And sometimes there's a solution that works for everyone. Something you can do if people trust you is ask questions that define the outer boundary of things. So, with an API, come up with an edge case, but make sure you frame it right. Hey, is this, I'm not trying to like say you're wrong in this, but what would happen in this edge case that I can think about? And that's just to kind of define the perimeter. So I don't think I have time for me talking about my experiences with Node.OS. What I want to talk about is, be mindful of your actions, some conclusions. How might this tweet be perceived? What am I adding when I comment to this GitHub thread? And this is important to me, is like, are your words scaring new people away? Like, a community needs new people, and if they look to the famous Node people and see never-ending wars, they're not going to join. They're just going to pass on by. And I know people who've told me this, that they're like, I want to get closer to Node, but I won't because it's just too scary. They're sensing that burnout would be there, not going anywhere near it. Be tactical with others. See there. And what I mean, I heard this from the Nonviolent Communication book. I love it, which is observation without evaluation is the highest form of intelligence. And what that really means is if you're like, I'm going to put on a jacket today, and my reaction is, that's dumb, it's warm. That's not observation without evaluation. That's jumping to evaluation. Observation would be like, oh, like what kind of jacket are you putting on? And maybe asking more questions about that. Take time to hear honest people. Fuck the trolls. They're just going to be like block them. Don't engage with them. Is my advice. Okay, so I think I'm just gonna say thank you.